Hello, I'm Chip Stites, and welcome to another important episode of The Laughing Retirement. Today, we are revisiting an earlier visit with Christian Galluzzi, who is CPA, because he's kind of unique. He is an Italian commercialista, that's the equivalent of American CPA. He is also a CPA in American. He also speaks excellent English, and he's a German CPA as well. So he's got German, Italian, and U.S. taxes covered. Now, Christian, whenever I talk to Americans, one of the first things that comes up is, oh my God, there's a 43% tax. And I have learned originally, I felt differently, but now I realize that Americans, when it comes to state tax, real estate tax, federal taxes, local taxes, all the different taxes that we pay, we're not really far apart because you have a 7% tax for the southern states and some towns in the central part of Italy. That allows Americans or people moving in their first year. Now, I'm not trying to tell you what the tax says, but I'm going to ask, number one, what is the 7% rule? Number two, has it changed? And number three, what are some of the mistakes that Americans make when they come here and they move around? They're trying to find a place to live within the 7% area. So let's start with number one. How does the 7% rule work?
So the 7% rule is mainly aimed at helping people that move from the US or from other countries and are receiving pension income and moving to Italy and being subject to a lesser amount of taxes than someone would be owing under the ordinary system. As you were saying, starting your conversation today, you said, yeah, many Americans are very afraid of the regular ordinary tax rates that Italy has. And you hear things like, oh, yeah, you need to pay 45% of taxes in Italy, which can, of course, be true depending on your income situation. You know, Italy already has a 43% income tax bracket that starts at income exceeding 50,000 euros, so the equivalent of roughly $55,000 to $60,000. So that can be easily reached by a US citizen that moves to Italy and has, let's say, pension income or a social security pension and maybe some IRA distributions that can easily be reached, in fact. And the 7% regime is a powerful tool, and I see this in practice a lot with all of the US citizens that contact me. We make calculations of the tax exposure they have, and we're really talking about 5 to 6 times the 7% rate, which means if you move to a 7% town, you're paying 7% effectively on all of your foreign income. But if you were to move to Milan or to Florence, which is a non-7% region, 3%, that's basically 6 to 7 times as much. And it materializes when we do the tax calculations. And if you add in the effect of having a wealth tax, if you go to a non-7% town, you can even reach 55% of effective tax rates, depending on your specific situation. So yes, it's true. Italy has very high tax rates for the regular system, and for what would be considered an average income level for a US citizen is already a very high income level for Italian proportions.
There is, while Americans are trying to digest this, I want to add something in there. When Italians do their taxes, they're also paying for their health insurance at the same time.
Correct. Italy doesn't have additional tax premiums on their health insurance. It's basically covered in the universal healthcare system that Italy has.
Yes, so that helps. Now, so if I was listening to you properly, the 7% regime can reduce your potential taxes by 80% for 10 years. Correct. And that's gigantic.
And it's the simplification compared to the regular tax regime, because if you're subject to the ordinary rules, then you also are subject to calculating income based on the Italian rules. When you have a flat tax regime that tells you you're going to be subject to a 7% on all of your foreign income, you just take all of your foreign income and apply the 7% rate to it. It's much simpler in the administration. The tax return filing itself is more accessible, and you don't have to fill out many of the other forms that you would be doing when you're under the ordinary system. For instance, something that I believe we're going to talk today is also expenses. So in a flat tax system or in a flat tax environment at 7%, you don't care about expenses because expenses are not deductible. So a flat tax is always, on the income you're receiving, on the gross income items like the gross income of pension. But you do not have to deal with medical expense deductions when you're in the 7% regime environment.
Okay. One of the things I want to make sure we get through right away that I hear all the time is my Roth IRA, that's tax-free. Is that tax-free in Italy?
So a Roth IRA, despite being a retirement product from a US perspective, it's seen as a after-tax product in Italy in the sense that only the earnings that come out of your distributions are considered taxable income. So the main difference between Roth IRA treatment in the US and Italy is that Italy wants to tax the earnings component. So it somehow defies the purpose. The US allows you to create after-tax or accumulate after-tax income as an investment for your retirement, and then eventually pay no taxes on the earnings component. So of course, Italy is not going to tax the entire distribution that you one day will take out of your Roth IRA, but this requires us calculating the earnings component, which sometimes can be really hard because not all of the US financial institutions or providers would give you the information that is needed to determine, okay, how much of my distribution is now an earnings component and how much of that is my original contribution or a return of my contribution.
Okay, so again, the 7% rule really, really helps as a way to mitigate this problem. What are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make when they move to a place and then they go somewhere else and then they move to a place and then they say, okay, we're going to stay here. Now let's apply the 7% rule. What are the mistakes that you can make if you move a lot?
Well, the number one mistake you can make is not to talk tax advice before you actually move and you set foot in the other country you're moving to, especially. One mistake that you can do to prevent using the 7% regime is you are establishing residency by chance a large town like Florence or Milan just because you need it for your immigration or to handle your registration, get your permesso di soggiorno. So these are the kind of mistakes you can make because the 7% regime requires an initial registration with a 7% town. Arrive in March of 2026 and you register in Florence to get your paperwork done. And then you move to a southern town in August and you pick up residency there. It's too late because you've registered your residenza in a non-7% town. So it requires really to have a clean start. You're not supposed to have been a resident for the previous 5 years at all in Italy. And so your first time residency that you pick needs to be a 7% town. Okay,
so that's important. Wherever you register, or wherever you get your visa registration and you have your rental contract and everything to apply for your visa and then your permesso di soggiorno, needs to be in the 7% area right away, one place.
Well, technically, it's the residenza anagrafica, which is where you register as your domicile or your residency, or where you have your first rental contract and you decide to register in that place. Okay. That's what counts. It doesn't mean you use the same agencies in the same town for handling your permesso. It's just very important that you take care of the registrazione anagrafica, which is done in the comune where you either have rented a place or where you want to purchase a home. or whatever. Of course, during the 7% regime duration of 10 years, you can, of course, move to another place that has the same requirements as the 7% regime. So if you move to another less than 20,000 inhabitants town within these regions, you do not lose the privilege of using the 7% regime.
Okay, that's
you only
important.
you only lose it if you move to a larger town or outside of these regions. Then you lose it prospectively. You do not lose it retroactively. So let's say you use it for 3 or 4 years and then decide to move to Milan because you don't like it. You do not lose it for the 4 years that you have already used. You only lose it prospectively. And there's no minimum duration for the 7% regime. There are other regimes in Italy that attract foreigners, like the Impatriati regime, that has some minimum duration. Some say it's 2 years, and it can be 3 years. It really depends on your specific situation. But the 7% regime is fairly flexible in that sense, that if you end up saying that you don't like it in these smaller towns and you want to leave, at least you do not lose whatever
what you've already paid.
Correct.
Okay. Let's talk for a bit about first-time homeowners. A lot of people have the dream of buying a house in Italy. And I know that in some areas of Italy, there are incentives for the first-time homeowner. Are there any tax benefits for the elective residency visa non-Italian citizen buying a first home?
So buying a first home comes with some not income taxes, but property tax aspects and registration taxes aspects. So when you purchase a real estate for the first time, or your first Italian real estate, and you choose to use it as your primary residency within 18 months from purchasing that home, you qualify for tax rebates when it comes to all of these transaction taxes involved when purchasing a home, which is primarily the imposta di registro in Italy for registering your property, which is 2% instead of 9% of the imputed value of the transaction. And
so, okay, that's the first real estate tax is 2% of the imputed transaction.
Right. And instead of 9% if you were to buy it as a secondary home.
Okay.
It's not necessarily based on the market value of the property, because the imputed value is something like, it's called the valore di catasto, the cadaster value, which is usually lower than the actual market price. But it still makes up a difference whether you pay 2% of that or 9% of that. And the second thing,
and that's a one-time payment, right?
That's a one-time payment.
One and done.
Correct.
Okay.
And it gives you this flexibility that you do move in immediately. You have 18 months usually after the date of signing, of closing of the transaction. You have 18 months to establish residency and make it your primary home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that deductible, Christian?
No, it's not deductible. No.
Okay.
No. What is deductible in a real estate transaction is things like your real estate agent. So the real estate agent fee can be deducted up to 1,000 euro. So that's not really a meaningful or very advantageous deduction, because it ends up being a portion of the 1,000, because major deductions in Italy give you a credit of 19% of your expense, meaning if you spend 5 or 6 or even 10,000 in real estate agent fees when you purchase a home, only 1,000 can be put on your tax return, and that results only 190 euros tax credit for tax saving, and probably not worth it. But this is just an example of deductible expenses when you purchase a home. This annual tax component about property taxes, which is called IMU. If you do not choose this home to be your primary home, then secondary homes or vacation homes are subject to IMU. And IMU is like a property tax that you would know from the US. It's not necessarily as high as the one that you're used to pay in some US states, but it's still a tax that needs to be calculated and paid every year that you own the property as your non-primary residency. So this to
How
get back.
much is
Yeah.
that, more or less?
Well, it's very hard to say. It really depends on the property. I mean, for a family apartment, it can go up to 600 to 800 euro a year, but that's really just a ballpark. I mean, it's really
Okay.
really hard. It changes from comune to comune, so there's no national register or national tax rate
Oh,
for that
okay.
tax. It's really administered and calculated by the commune in which it is located. So
Okay.
and so it's not a tax that's administered centrally. It's a tax that is administered by the single communes and single municipalities.
Okay.
And
And you would help people regardless of where they are.
yes,
Okay. Okay.
correct. Yeah, because there's methods on how to get to those tax rates for each commune, and then we can do the calculations and tell you exactly what you need to pay for your tax. But that's only home as a secondary home. Because the nice thing of buying a first-time property that you elect to be your primary residency is that you're exempt from IMO. So you're not paying property taxes in Italy if you're using your home as your primary residency. That's
Okay.
a good savings component. Yeah.
Is there any other major deduction that somebody can take when buying a home?
Renovation expenses would be one that is worthwhile addressing. So if you are buying something that needs to be renovated, then there's incentives in Italy over a time frame usually of 10 years where you can claim deductions. Currently, the maximum amount that can be deducted is on an expense of 96,000 euros. That you invest 96,000 euro in fully renovating a home, you are allowed to claim 50% of that if it's your primary home. 50% of that amount, which is roughly 4,800 euros a year, 48,000 divided by 10 years, and that's a credit that you can take against your tax due that you calculated in your income tax return every year. So that can be an up to 4,800 euro a year tax saving. These deductions have been used in politics a lot to, distribute favors between political parties and voters. So it's constantly changing. There has been the famous 110% deduction for renovations up 2 years ago, where people could deduct their renovation expenses. Things are being tightened now and are being reduced, but there's still a lot of options and opportunities when it comes to renovation expenses.
Oh, that's important to know, because a lot of the houses that are sold are quote unquote fixer-uppers in some way.
Correct. What you understand is that Italy is very strict whenever it comes to claiming expense deduction. So there will be a lot of requirements, and we don't want to talk about that now due to timing constraints, but you could talk for hours about what requirements you need to fulfill in order to eventually be able to deduct that amount. It goes from things like that all of your payments need to be trackable. So you need to have a fattura, you need to have an invoice, you need to pay by credit card or by bank transfer. So if you're trying to save money by having someone doing it without an invoice, or without having a proper work permit, or without having a proper construction or renovation permit, then you're going to save a lot of money, but it's not deductible, because then they would say, no, this is not allowed.
Okay. That's really not a lot different in the US. I mean, you have to prove what you're doing one way or another. We've talked about real estate deductions. We've talked about the first house. We've talked about the 7% rule. What about any other deductions that come with just living in Italy? Is there anything that A, is maybe unusual to Italy, or B, people do all the time that they may not think of as a deduction?
Yeah, let me give you a brief introduction before I list you specific expenses that could be deducted, because many US citizens that ask me this question have some expectations that are not really accurate when it comes to the Italian tax system, because the US is very liberal when it comes to providing deductions.
Yes.
There's this famous standard deduction that most US citizens use, which is basically a flat deduction that starts somewhere at $16,100 for a single filer and can go up to a much higher amount if you're married filing jointly or if you are of an
Yep.
age over 65. So that's an expectation that you cannot have with Italy. Italy doesn't have anything that is close enough to be seen as a standard deduction. There are some credits for low-income earners, and by low-income earners, we're typically looking at €8,500 a year in maximum income.
But
you
you
can
could
have
you
in our-
couldn't move here and only make that amount of money. So
Correct. And so what I'm trying to say is, for US citizens, it needs to be understood that when we talk about deductions in Italy, there are many limits to those deductions. Most of the time, we're talking about 3 digits tax savings amounts, which means it's not in your overall picture. If you are used in the US to pay almost no taxes or a very low rate because you standard deduction, you can certain expenses without any limits. You will not get the same in Italy because in Italy they play a bit role the tax picture because
hang on for a second. Now, let's take a second here. I want you to say that again slower because you're breaking up a little bit on the audio.
Oh, okay.
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 So let's try that again because I heard what you said, but it was kind of garbled, and I think it's pretty important.
Okay. So what I was trying to say is, in the US, there's this standard deduction that helps many US citizens to lower their tax bill, where you do not have an incentive anymore to claim additional expenses because that's already covering most of your expenses that you would otherwise itemize. In Italy, you have the amounts are very, very limited.
Okay.
The highest amounts. So there's usually, in my practice, when I look at US citizens moving here and retiring in Italy, their expense profile is usually in the 3 digits margin where you say, okay, I can maybe these deductions, but save you 300 or 400 euros in taxes. That's not going to change your big picture. You're used to pay almost no tax in the US, okay? But you're immediately exposed to at least 25% taxes in Italy. And if I make you save 300 or 400 euro, this may be paying for your accountant for preparing a tax return, but it's not really bringing down tax rate.
Not really helping.
It's not really helping. It's not taking you down from that myth that Italy has very high tax. And actually, if you were in a higher tax bracket, let's say that you would be making 100,000 a year in income, you would already be touching or be in that 43% tax bracket. So guess what? What it says is you're too rich to claim deductions, meaning even if I can medical expenses in there and some renovation in there.
Hang on, you broke up again. When you move around a lot, for some reason, it seems to break up. But what I think you were saying, and this is important, is that if you're making more than $100,000 a year and you're in that 43% bracket, the Italian government says at the same time, well, you're making a lot of money, so we're not going to give you the deductions anyway.
Yeah, they're either limited or they're fully erased or neglected.
Okay. Well, I that makes sense, and I keep going back to the fact that a lot of the services here that we have to pay for, you don't have to pay for here. And so, or they're a whole lot less expensive. Medical care here is ridiculously less expensive than in the US. And so there's some savings against that. In the US, I think over 7,000, that's deductible. And here, it's not deductible, but you're also not paying much for it. So,
and one more thing about claiming deductions. I mean, I'm not saying that we should not claim deductions because every deduction that, for instance, your medical expenses that are registered for your tessera sanitaria in Italy, whenever you go to the pharmacy or the drugstore, you get you're being asked to present your tessera sanitaria because they report your tax office. Those are in advance in the year on your so we usually pull those automatically from tax authorities database and take them into account in your tax return. But more expenses than what is registered would, or claiming more expenses registered.
Hang on, you broke up. Claiming more than what is registered. Now say it again.
So claiming more than what is registered in the is of the tax and pharmaceutical expenses when you go to the pharmacy is not advisable to deduct because it automatically triggers an audit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we're talking about 19% of your expense. If they send you a letter where it says, okay, you have like 200 euros pharmacy expenses, we want to see the receipts. You understand that dealing with that notice or dealing with the cost already has some cost. Maybe you have.
Okay, hang on for a second. The audio just disappeared. Well,
It's strange.
Well, it's all right. It's not your fault. But what you're saying is that over a certain amount, you automatically trigger an audit that requires you to prove what is not a great expense anyway.
Yes. What I'm trying to say is the tax authorities have installed a way to track expenses when it comes to medical expenses by just using your tessera sanitaria. So you pay for your drug at the pharmacy store, and it gets registered. And when I prepare your tax return the year after, I go to the tax office system and pull any information that is registered under your tax number and can already say, okay, 500 euros of medical expenses that I can deduct. If I do that, it's fine. You audit. Many clients come and say, but look, I have 200 euros additional expenses here that I would like to claim. And I tell them, okay, number one, it's going to be a 19% tax saving. So it's going to save you 40, 50 euros of taxes. And it's going to 100% trigger an audit on that amount that you're claiming. So I'll receive a notice. We need to deal with the notice, because if you don't deal with the notice, they're going to assess penalties on that deduction. So I'm saying you will need to pay someone, or you will need to invest a lot of time dealing with that notice, that it doesn't really make sense to claim that deduction. So my common practice is to just claim the deductions for whatever amount we have already
in the system.
pulled the system that is registered under your codice fiscale.
Okay. We've been on now for almost 40 minutes. And I think one of the services that you offer that is so valuable is to allow an American who's thinking about moving to Italy to see his US taxes in one column and Italian taxes in another. And then he can decide, oh, I really do need to go to the 7% area, or it doesn't make any difference to me, or this is where I was going to buy a house, but maybe I shouldn't. So it helps. Christian's comparison, your comparison of US and Italian taxes can help people make decisions about moving. And I think that's a valuable service. And I can also tell you from my personal experience, Christian did my taxes this year. Thank you very much. It came in slightly better than I thought they would. So I am a happy person. And if you have any questions at all, at the bottom of this will be your email address. Please say you saw it on The Laughing Retirement from Chip Stites. And if you have any questions for Christian, you can always send them to him or back them up. Both of us at the same time, send them to me, because believe me, if you're asking the question, so are a lot of other people. And we want to make sure we help as many people as possible. So Christian, thank you very, very much. No doubt we will do this again, because I don't think we got to all the questions, but I look forward to talking to you and seeing you again. And I also hope you passed your test for being a boat captain.
That's going to be next week.
Oh, that's next week. Okay.
Yes.
Christian lives on the ocean and enjoys the water. And as in all things Italian, there's a license for it. So, in my case, like a driver's license. This is a boat license. So
Thank you, Chip.
we will
Thank
see
you for
you.
having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And I hope you will avail yourself of Christian services. I have, and it does work. So thank you very much.
Perfect.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you to you as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. And I hope you enjoyed that interview with Christian Galluzzi. He's uniquely positioned to help you with your taxes because obviously he speaks good English, but he's also a licensed CPA in the United States and a commercialista, which is equivalent of the CPA here in Italy. So he can compare your taxes. He can show you what the difference in tax would be. He can explain how it works. And if you would like to meet him, I hope you will join us May 3rd to May 9th, 2026, here in Rieti to talk about taxes, banking, real estate, visas. We're going to have a visa and citizenship lawyer here. We're going to have Christian, the CPA, here. We're going to have people from Beeper Bank here, as well as Keys Partners. So I hope that if you would like to have a great time, a unique vacation, if you would like to enhance a vacation that you may be already planning, come beforehand and then come to Rieti, or from Rieti, leave with what you've learned to enjoy Florence or Naples or Venice or Rome. There's plenty to do here. There's plenty to see. Learn to make your own spaghetti. Go to a place where 800 years ago, this year, something that you probably have in your house that you put up every Christmas was started. This is a special place. I hope you enjoyed once again our time with Christian, and I hope you will join us May 3rd to May 9th here in Rieti. If you're interested, no obligation. If you're interested, send me an email to info at thelaughingretirement.com and enter in it, just put interested. I'll have your email, and as information comes due, I'll send it out to you right away. Thank you very much. This is Chip Stites and The Laughing Retirement.